Welcome everyone to Level Up. This is your girl Jean Marie, and today I have a really interesting person on. I got a chance to listen to her on a social media platform. I don't quite remember which one it was, but I tell you, I was so intrigued by what she was sharing that I immediately reached out to her. And I wanted to bring her on because you know what Level Up is all about. It's all about leveling up to being your highest and best expression of yourself, right? And so I'm going to read something from her bio because I do believe I won't do her justice if I just try to share it simply on my own. I will tell you something. I was so taken aback by, the hurricane that we recently had in Jamaica. And it was quite something else to know that even after something as devastating as Hurricane Melissa, that there was still so much that people would have to endure in the aftermath of the storm, right? But first, let me introduce my guest. Her name is Dr. Tamara Chambers Richards, and she's an authority in health sciences and wellness education. She holds a PhD in epidemiology from the University of Saskatchewan and boasts over 2 decades of experience in higher education, contributing significantly to program development and advancing student achievement across multiple academic institutions. Currently serving as an academic dean, health and community services, Dr. Chambers Richards utilizes her vast expertise to further educational objectives with a focus on enriching the learning experiences of future healthcare professionals. She has shared her research in a variety of scholarly journals and has been a speaker at numerous conferences, primarily exploring themes such as quality of life, healthcare, satisfaction, and neurological disorders. Dr. Chambers Richards is passionately dedicated to the values of truth and reconciliation, equity, diversity, and inclusion. She firmly believes in the potential of education to drive meaningful social change and actively promotes these principles through all her interactions. Her commitment to leadership excellence earned her the College and Institute's Canada's Bronze Award for Leadership Excellence, underscoring her significant impact within the academic landscape. Outside of her professional endeavors, Dr. Chambers Richards constantly engages with the online community and expresses her spiritual values through her YouTube channel, Highest Praise Chronicles, which is inspired by her trilogy of books, Highest Praise Chronicles of a Grateful Heart. Welcome. Welcome to Level Up, Dr. Chambers Richards. I don't know how you prefer to be called, but let's welcome you to Level Up and to the Primal Media Group. It's such a pleasure to have you. I'm so glad that when I reached out to you, agreed to come on because I know people have seen so much of the devastation that Hurricane Melissa created in our beautiful island of Jamaica, right? I can assume that you're Jamaican because you did sound Jamaican. And but one of the things that we don't hear a lot about is what can actually happen, right? After the storm has passed. And we know that it created quite a bit of devastation. But what are the health factors that people can still face and are facing now, right, as a result of this hurricane? So, Dr. Chambers Richards, you have the stage.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I've been referring to myself now as Dr. Tamara. Usually I just go by Tamara, but because of the information that I'm sharing,
Hmm.
I feel like folks might wonder, what do I know? And so I've
Right.
added the doctorate so that they know that I am educated in
Hmm.
epidemiology, and so I do
Right.
have that authority to share that information. So you've asked, what are some of the things that folks might be grappling with after such a devastating hurricane as Melissa, a Category 5 hurricane? Apart from the intense devastation and being displaced from homes, being cut off from communities, people would be grappling with floodwaters, some of which may have subsided now. And
Yes. Hmm.
the concern that I had, and I think where you might have discovered me, so to speak, was in a video where I was talking about the dangers of floodwaters. And I was inspired to do that video because I realized that people didn't know this because I saw children diving
Yes. Yes.
into
Hmm.
floodwaters. It might have
Hmm.
looked like a river. I saw people just wading without protective gear.
Right.
And
It
so
looked
I
like
thought,
fun.
yeah, it looks, it's something new and
Harmless. Hmm.
exciting and
Yeah.
harmless. And
Hmm.
let's just have fun, right? We've been there,
Right.
which is the nature of our Jamaican folks. The resilience allows us
Yes.
to
Yes.
find other ways to entertain ourselves and to create avenues for survival. But the major concerns that I had about the exposure to floodwaters was that floodwaters can carry harmful microorganisms such as bacteria, viruses, parasites, and other things, fungi. Because and when I saw footage, I'm not there and I
Hmm.
haven't been there yet. But when I saw footage and heard the discourse, people were talking about animals that would have been on the land for days in a decomposed situation.
Hmm.
And the thought struck me that if we're having flood waters and debris washing down, then we're in fact having soil from farms. And we're talking about the western end of the island, where the breadbasket and the agricultural bed of the country. And
Right.
so exposure to the urine from
Yes.
these animals, from
Hmm.
livestock. I know that most people think that leptospirosis is through rats, but usually the public health information is about rats because that's the most common. Rats get into our
Hmm.
homes and so on and
Right.
urinate on food supplies. But in a case of a natural disaster, this is where through floodwaters we're getting exposed to bacteria that's carried by other hosts that we wouldn't naturally or normally be exposed to in regular everyday situations. That was a huge concern. The
Mm.
leptospirosis, the
Hmm.
floodwaters, then other bacteria, tetanus, and I know folks think that only if you get cut by a rusty
A
nail
rusty nail
or
or something.
rusty zinc,
Hmm.
that would where we have concerns. But I wanted to educate folks that it's not about the rust on the nail, but it's about the bacteria in the soil and the fact that these are puncture wounds, where if you have a puncture and a wound is deep, then anaerobic microorganisms
Yes. Hmm.
that don't need oxygen to survive, like tetanus, would
Right.
multiply and the harm would be there. And we are not necessarily exposed to lockjaw on a regular basis, but these are
Hmm.
some of the things that, from a health perspective, that people might be grappling in. And the
Right.
conditions that I was seeing with stuff just strewn about and the exposure that people have to fungi, from
Hmm.
the soil, from the damp environment, and the
Right.
spread of that in close proximity is a concern as well.
Yeah, it's
And
hmm Go ahead. Go ahead.
we tend to also think about the physical effects that people need food and they need shelter and they need clothing. But I was not there and I was deeply affected emotionally and
Mm.
psychologically, where I
Yes.
felt like, how am I going to go to work if I'm going to have to drive through rubble and debris? And so
Right.
I thought mental health is not something that we talk about a lot in Jamaica. And we like to say, oh, you have life you can rebuild. And this sense that we're so strong and resilient that we don't focus on the mental
Right.
health of
Hmm.
folks. And
Yeah.
it led me to think about intergenerational trauma. If we know the history of Jamaica, we know how Jamaica was formed
Hmm.
through Africans, which
Right.
were transported through the triangle slave trade. And so we do carry the
Oh,
effects
yes.
of that still today, and how this trauma yes, we've had hurricanes before and we've rebuilt, but this was a significantly
This was,
damaging hurricane.
yes, it really was. One of the things I wanted to just bring forward, because you're right. A lot of times we don't think about the mental health aspects of any of these challenging situations that we may have encountered as a people. And all too often, like I hear from friends, I hear from, like the associations that I'm associated with here, that represent many of the organizations in Jamaica. And, they're talking about the losses that people have had, as far as material things. And the fact that they feel like, oh gosh, how can they possibly start over? Yes, we're a resilient people. And a lot of times as Jamaicans, here's one of the things that we do: we hold everything in and we put our best face forward, and we don't actually deal with what's going on inside of us, right? Mentally, we don't, we emotionally, even spiritually, we tend to put a lid on top of it all, and we come out and we put on a smile, right? And when we get back to that stage in our daily lives, when we're by ourselves, or we're in the quiet, we have to go back into the quiet of our mind. That's when it truly affects us, right? So here are some of the things that I would like you to share with the audience, because you've talked about the diseases and ill health that can come about, as far as um, from the flood waters, right? But also you're talking about the mental health aspects of it as well. Um, I don't hear a lot coming from our public health in Jamaica addressing this. I don't hear enough of it. So I know that this, I tell you, it's a platform that represents a Jamaican diaspora. And so I would love for you to share some pointers as to what people can do, even with what little they have, to prevent any further illnesses, or even to address what may be psychologically going on within their minds.
I think I'll start with that bit that we've been talking about, that mental and emotional well-being, because I think it's important. You touched on it a little when you talked about even spiritually, we put a lid on things because Jamaica sees itself as a Christian nation, and part of our
Mm-hmm.
culture suggests that because we're Christian, then we are not anxious or depressed. And if we demonstrate that, then there's some judgment to our Christ-like nature or
Mm-hmm.
our belief in God. And so
Mm-hmm.
for me, mental and emotional well-being means to acknowledge our feelings, right? Which is why I had shared that how I was feeling
Yes.
and how I just needed to just get into my car and share so that I
Mm-hmm.
could purge my mind
Yes.
of the
Yeah.
thoughts. So it's normal to feel stressed and anxious and sad or overwhelmed after the devastation. So folks need to allow themselves time to process emotions. They might be fine 1 minute, but might also find themselves being overcome with grief, with emotion,
Mm-hmm.
with
Mm-hmm.
irritability,
Mm-hmm.
with some sort of aggression, not sure how to address those emotions that they have. So it's important, as you say, to use the little that we have. Some communities might be cut off, health centers might not be accessible. So, in seeking support, I want to keep it basic for folks. So, this support might look like talking to family and friends,
Mm-hmm.
community members. If we can't get to mental health professionals, talk about your experiences and your feelings. And the experiences that I'd like us to focus on are the experiences of hope. So when you're sharing, we are wanting to share how we've overcome. So if Ma Sam's roof blew off and Ma Sam was able to escape and find solace or help, then we talk about the help versus the roof being blown off. because
Right.
we're building in our
Yes.
mind that
Mm-hmm.
resilience,
Yeah.
that strength that we're
Mm-hmm.
gathering from shared experiences and community
Yes.
support.
I was at a function on Sunday evening, and the host of the function was sharing that she a group of them got down to Jamaica a few days after Hurricane Melissa. So she was like, she says, listen, when you see it in person, it's nothing compared to the pictures and the videos that you see. She said it's so much worse. And she said, they were going through different communities, particularly in the rural areas. And, they were giving out food, whatever food they had, and water. She says, oh my gosh, water is needed. She said, when you think about it, I have a bottle of water here. And she says, if you give someone a bottle of water, she says they're actually sharing it with four, five, six people because everything is in short supply. And when you think about it, we it's hard for us to fathom waking up one day and not having food, not having basic water to drink. And she said, they were just going through different communities and just handing stuff out. And they were listening to people. And she says, one community they got into, and she said, it, there was only one house that was
Mhm,
left standing. One.
mhm,
And she says, everybody from the community, that's where that one house sheltered them during the
mhm,
hurricane. And she
mhm.
said, it was like life was just coming anew around this one house because everybody that was gathered there and people had tire rims out in the yard and they were making a fire and they were trying to do their best with what they had. And she said one of the things that brought a smile to her face, she says, wow, it took a devastating storm
Mhm,
like Melissa
mhm.
for our people to return to community because that's what old Jamaica was about. And
Absolutely.
yes, yes. But she said it was really, it was, you wanted to cry and you wanted to smile all at the same time. And she said they were going, now they had clothes as well that they were giving out. And they were going through some other communities. And she said all they had left were um, jeans for women. And there were some guys there and they were like, oh my gosh, we don't have anything. We lost everything. And she said, boy, all I have, is some jeans for women. And the guy said, look, pants is pants, because in these times it hard. It don't matter as long as we can put our legs in and we can pull it up and it can cover us because many of them just left. They're just left with what they had on their backs, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you're right. When, sometimes we may laugh about it. We may say, oh my God, we're such resilient people. We know how to wake up and dance and get together and have a good time. But there are moments when you're going to sit down and realize and say, boy, I don't have anything. I don't even know where to start, right? And those are the
Yes.
moments when you really have to dig deep. And sometimes it's difficult to do it on your own, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, sometimes it's difficult to do it on our own. And so
Yes.
I like the fact that you said, talk to your family, friends, anyone, just pour it out how you're feeling. It's not a time for us to want to cover up and be ashamed that this is where I am because there's so many people who have felt it. So many people have been touched by the devastation of the storm. One of my family members, I know after the storm, she lost her roof. So did my family's roof in Jamaica. It also went, and so many of our friends and stuff. And one of the things she said, she got the tarpaulins for to cover up, and she was the following day she was like, honey, I made up the house. Every bed is made, everything. I swept out water, blah, blah, blah. And she said, yes. I'm like, people, someone stopped by and they were like, oh my gosh, it doesn't even look like a storm came through here. And
Yes.
I said, wow, that's great to feel like that the day after. But let's see, I
Yes,
hope you can keep that same high spirit, going forward. I said, you're strong, you're resilient. But as the days went by, I could feel her spirit going lower and lower. And I said, listen, now is a time that you really have to align with the power of God within you. Because I said, you see all the pretty things in the house and the fact that you got a kick out of being able to bounce back and and make up the beds and make everything look pretty again. I said that was not going to last very long because when you look around, you still see your neighbors, your community that has been devastated. And unless your heart is as hard as a rock, it's going to move you and it's going to move you very deeply, you know. And
absolutely.
she works for the government and what she was saying is that, oh my gosh, it just brings her like to a low because when she realized that there's so many people who may not have been in the position that she's in that can maybe find it a little easier to bounce back, right? There's some
Yes.
people who they don't know where they're going to start.
No. In sharing those experiences, you touched on a few things that I'd like to
Mm-hmm.
zoom in on
Mm-hmm.
because you talked about old Jamaica and that community spirit. It is so important because the devastation is so vast. It has touched so many people, no respecter of persons.
No
And
respecter.
and no,
Mm-hmm.
it is
Mm-hmm.
not. And one of the things too is while staying informed is important, excessive exposure to the coverage of the disaster can be detrimental to mental health. So folks might need to take breaks, practice self-care, so
Mm-hmm.
that includes engaging in activities that help you relax and to cope with stress. So we talked about exercise, I don't know, going for a walk, uh, uh, meditation and prayer, spending time with loved ones. Now is the time to gather as
Yes.
community to take care of each other. And you might be surprised to know how helping others in need is a powerful way to cope with one's own trauma and to rebuild that community. Because if we
Mm-hmm.
if we are focusing on ourselves, like my family, the home that I grew up in is no more, is no longer.
Mm.
And that's
Right.
one of the reasons that I decided to do videos as well, because I thought,
Right.
you know what? If I am to sit here and lament and bemoan that situation, I'm going to be so negatively impact mentally. So what can I do to think of others and to help? So that means that we should be thinking no matter how much help we need, we can
Mm-hmm.
find ways in
Oh,
helping
yes.
others, in
Yes.
being kind, in
Mm-hmm.
reaching out. And being kind doesn't necessarily mean that you are doling stuff out. It means it's an attitude of gentleness, of empathy, of understanding, because helping
Absolutely.
others is a way
Ghana
to
girls,
cope with
stand
our
up for
own
DJ
trauma.
Gaddafi, the
Mm-hmm.
number one DJ
Absolutely.
ever,
Absolutely.
ever.
One of the things too I wanted to for you to touch on, because I saw so many videos of these, so many of these, the big mega marts and stuff were destroyed, and you saw people in there going in and grabbing big packets of food and stuff, and distributing them and stuff, and those products, um, my gosh, those
Yes,
products in those particular buildings and places were floodwaters. Oh my
yeah,
gosh,
yeah,
the contamination. And I
yeah.
don't think our people even realize
No,
the
no.
toxicity that they're exposing themselves to.
Thank you for bringing that up because in times of distress, we're so glad to be able to find something, right? Something, some
Mm-hmm.
food, and
Mm-hmm.
it might seem good in the moment and just ready to be had. But
Yeah.
anything that would have come in contact with floodwaters, so the rice, the flour,
Mm-hmm.
Anything that would have been soaked, we shouldn't be using it and we shouldn't be selling it to people. Then there is also corrosion for the things
Yes.
that might be in cans and puncture. These things
Mm-hmm.
might be punctured with holes that we cannot see, and bacteria, dangerous bacteria, gets into these food supplies. We just have to be so careful. It might not be your lucky day to come upon items that have been exposed to
Right.
floodwaters. Somebody commented on something that I put out, that the people were arguing with somebody who owned a store, that they weren't releasing the goods to them and the goods were
Mm-hmm.
just there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is for your own protection, folks. Uh, People who have stores and have food agencies, they have to do food safety
Right.
training. And so
Mm-hmm.
we shouldn't just think that people are just being mean and selfish. They're being kind and protective. Because if you get exposed to botulism, which is one of the conditions that you can get from tin food that has puncture wounds and that has anaerobic bacteria as well, then
Mm-hmm.
you are having severe negative effects. So you can have hepatitis A, which damages your liver.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about the leptospirosis, which can have damaging effects to your liver as well, to your kidneys. So many bad things that can happen. And if you get exposed to mold, there are some flesh-eating fungi
Yes.
and bacteria as well. And some of the seafood that has been exposed can carry cholera as well. Remember
Mm-hmm.
now that
Mm-hmm.
floodwaters have a high chance of having industrial and agricultural chemicals, as well as waste matter from
Right.
sewage. And
Yes.
when it's contained and it goes into purification areas, that's fine, it gets cleaned up. But where it's not contained, all of those germs, when we get exposed to them, especially in periods of stress, and people don't understand that we're whole beings meaning that our physical or emotional or spiritual or psychological or mental is all linked. So think now that we have natural immunity,
Mm-hmm.
and where we have suffered such devastation and we are in such stress, it's not so easy to maintain that immunity where there are high levels of
Right.
stress.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
Mm-hmm.
you are predisposed now to any little exposure, you can get very sick. So if the exposure is severe, something that would not necessarily make you as severely sick, some simple exposure can make you sick to the
Yes.
point of
Yes.
life threatening. And that's what I
Yes.
want people to understand.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just simple. It's not just to eat or to sell or to have food. It's
Right. Right.
to be
Yeah.
safe in the environment as well.
Now, one of the things I also have been hearing a lot of is how the mosquitoes have been breeding up, right? And that's another issue. That's another issue. I mean, gosh, there's already so much to deal with, and then you have these pesky little things that will just like to come around and bite you everywhere. And what are some of the precautionary measures that people can take? Because listen, we know that in Jamaica, when it's rainy season, they burn the coils of the mosquito destroyer, right? But right? But now
Yes,
that, there's so many people who are exposed to the elements right now because, there's
yes,
still a, a huge huge numbers of homelessness, right? What are
absolutely.
some of the things that people can simply do to protect themselves? Because now people are worried about, what these little creatures can actually bring, right, to them as they come to taste their blood, right? So, what are some of the precautionary measures?
Before I talk about the precautionary measures, I just want
Mm-hmm.
to expose people to mosquito-borne illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
Dengue is a big one. Dengue is
Yes.
endemic
Yes.
to Jamaica, which means that there are certain mosquitoes that we have that carry
Mm-hmm.
the dengue virus, right? When a mosquito is infected and that mosquito bites you and exchanges fluid with you, then your risk of dengue is increased. And these mosquitoes are breeding where we have standing water. We're going to have mosquitoes laying eggs and multiplying rapidly and being a risk to folks. There's also chikungunya. We had an outbreak a
Yes.
number of
Yes.
years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and the Zika virus. These are
Yes.
viruses that can be so harmful and deadly to folks if the right conditions exist. What we need to do in our surroundings, there's a role for the public health arm, the public measures in the country to ensure that there's fogging that's taking place that has to be increased to destroy mosquitoes. On top of the fogging, though, folks need to, as much as there's devastation, they need to try to cut the grass
Yes.
so that
Mm-hmm.
these pesky insects, and because of climate change and the globalization, we're having other types of mosquitoes that are laying eggs in grass and not necessarily water.
Ooh.
So mosquitoes can breed on land. So it's important to be cutting the grass. So
Mm-hmm.
we're removing those hiding places. There's also, if you're going to store water, then you're covering that. These
Yes.
barrels that people have now
Yes.
that they're catching
Mm-hmm.
the rainwater, that's covered so we don't have
Mm-hmm.
the laying of mosquitoes. I know that garbage disposal is a problem. So when I was a little girl, I know that the tins, the cans, you bore
Yeah.
holes in them so that they don't
Uh-huh.
gather water. So those are
Mm-hmm.
some of the simple things we can do for ourselves in our areas, in our
Right. Mm-hmm.
communities, to
Mm-hmm.
just clean up the debris as best as possible,
Right.
to
Right.
clean up the grass, bore holes in the cans, and if we have nets,
Use them.
use them and the
Yeah.
long sleeves. And they say that the black clothing draws mosquitoes. So you
Oh,
might want to wear lighter clothing as well because they're not as attractive to
right.
mosquitoes. So your lighter long sleeve clothing is
Mm-hmm.
important to wear. And I know it's hot and so on, but we have to protect ourselves. That's some of the safety measures for protection against mosquito bites and insect repellents. Now is a time where lots of aid is coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So people
Mm-hmm.
who are packing stuff for relief can think
Yes.
about that. If you pack
Yes.
mosquito destroyers, the
The
insect
repellents.
repellents,
Yes.
nets, that will be very helpful in
Yeah.
this time.
Yeah. And I understand they're still looking for tarpaulins because there's a
Yes.
shortage of them. And one person I spoke with on Sunday, she said that her house is still open, still quite open because supplies have been running low because it's in such demand.
You touched on tarps, and I'm going to digress a little bit because I think we have an audience that might thinking about how they might help.
Mm-hmm.
And as you think about the safety, then there are water purification tablets too that can be bought in bulk and packed
Mm-hmm.
in the relief supplies. And something that I don't think people might be thinking of is diabetes, the glucose reading machines and
Oh,
batteries and
oh,
strips
yeah,
that might go short as folks are cut off in the communities so that they can monitor these chronic conditions to stay
yeah.
safe.
That's a good suggestion. I never thought about that. I never thought about that. It's a good suggestion because, as a matter of fact, the function that I went to Sunday evening, that it was also geared towards fundraising for the victims, of Hurricane Melissa because there's so much, gosh, it's so much devastation. And it's going to take a while. It's going to take quite a while before people are able to get back on their feet. But every little bit helps. Even right here at Primal, we partnered with another station, and they had DJs. They played an entire Saturday. I think it was two different Saturdays, just raising funds for the people of Jamaica. And it every little bit counts, right? Like they say in Jamaica, every mickle makes a muckle, right?
Every
Every
makes a
bit counts,
muckle.
and it doesn't matter if sometimes we may think that, oh, I'm not in a position to do anything, but every little bit. Sometimes we have stuff that we're sitting on, clothes that we're no longer wearing, because when you think about it, people are in such grave need, and food, clothing, medications, so much is needed. Just like you talked about the blood pressure machines, the little ones, right? That they can check their
Yes.
pressure and stuff. Things that we wouldn't think about. Shoes. I mean, so much is needed. And but just making people aware, Dr. Tamara, I know that's you your go-to meme
Moniker.
yourself. So I wanted you to really share the seriousness of the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, because many people don't know. Many people don't know. What you don't know, you just don't know, right? And when I, actually saw videos of the kids jumping in the water and actually swimming and having fun, and they think of this as fun, and people are having parties right by the flood waters and dancing, and and yeah, it's great that the storm is over, but there's still things that you have to be aware of, right? That can still affect you now and down the road, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hoarse because um my I went to a Christmas party last night, and of course I was like, oh, you're shouting it. My voice is really gone. But I just thought it was important when I heard you sharing online on social media. And I just think as many people who can hear the concerns, right? What they should be paying attention to, the things that they can do to prevent further problems in their lives. I just think it's very important because many don't know. And I know as children, we've seen. I don't know. I don't even remember if I've ever done anything like that. But you've seen, like, even during the rainy season, you'd see kids walking home from school and they take their shoes and their socks off
Barefooted.
and they're walking around in the water and slopping around because kids, and there's things that you think about, oh, this looks like fun. Let's do it. And one starts and everybody else follows, right? But
Yeah.
and one of the other things too, as adults, many of the people who have their homes were totally flooded out, right? And they're trying to salvage whatever they can. And I'm thinking, let it go. Just let it go. You're talking about the flood waters and mud and you don't know what else came in with that, right? And I've heard people like, oh my gosh, on the days when the sun came out, yes, I put out the stuff, the sun.
Oh my goodness. There's so much to touch on
Yes.
because we talk a lot about bacteria and viruses, and we fail to understand that they're parasites. So eggs that are laid in
Mm-hmm.
floodwaters and how they can
Mm-hmm.
get stuck and they're
Yeah.
microscopic. We don't see them and we pass them on by contact with
Yes.
each other,
Yes.
by dirty hands and so on. But I'm going to put a little spin on it because I was thinking about the spiritual nature
Mm-hmm.
of disease.
Mm-hmm.
And Leviticus itself,
Yes.
it does talk about the mildew and the mold and how the priest is to go in and shut it up. And if
Yes.
it becomes overcome after seven
Mm-hmm.
days or some days like that, people can read
Yeah.
through Leviticus, then it needs to be condemned. And because there's very limited generational wealth and people find it hard to start over, we don't think about these practices. Some things will need to be condemned
Yes.
because of the mold and
Mm-hmm.
the spores, the fungal
Yes.
spores, and when they
Yes.
multiply
Yes.
and get into
Yes.
our lungs, we're going to have an increase in respiratory challenges, Gene, because
Yes.
of the mold and the
Yes.
spores and the
Yes.
environment. It's deep in the
Yes.
walls,
Yes.
right? Some
In
things
the
are going to
mattresses, I see
be,
people putting mattresses out to sun and they're going to reuse them, not thinking that when they're breathing in all of that.
yes, there's going to be an increase in asthma and asthma-like conditions, not because you get wet in the rain, because we don't understand the fungal
Right.
aspects and the risks
Right.
from fungi and
Yes.
the spores.
Hmm.
Some things will just need to be bulldozed and crushed up and start
Get rid of
again.
it.
Some of the
Yes.
furniture will need to be
Yes.
condemned because
Yes.
when mold sets in, some mold you can just sun it and get rid of it. We need people who are experts
Right.
on these things. There will be lots of sick building syndromes, and sick
Hmm.
building is when the mold, you just can't get rid of it.
Right. Right.
And so that's something that I want to bring to folks' attention to the parasites that we can have that would have laid eggs, that when the flood waters pass through and the eggs become attached to some of our household items and how we ingest them in our systems and we don't have proper conditions for use of the bathroom and
Hmm.
how that gets spread.
Hmm.
So hand washing is something that we have to promote right now because so many viruses are transmitted from touch, human contact. And if you
Hmm.
don't know where the things are coming from or what the things we're exposed to, then
Right.
that's something to
Right.
bear in mind. We just have to be vigilant. And as I talk about vigilant, I know you didn't ask me, but I do have a concern for the children.
Yes.
Intergenerational trauma and what we carry and the aggression and the violence and the poor conflict skills.
Yes.
And we talk about community and old community, and that's good. But we also have to be vigilant about what the children are
Hmm.
being exposed to in
Yes.
these conditions where the walls have been removed and people are living in a communal fashion and
Yes.
how that
Yes.
intergenerational trauma can
Yes.
play upon
Yes.
risks of adverse childhood events for children. We need to just be so vigilant and concerned not just about food and rebuilding a house, but about the long-term effects. You said the storm is over, but the storm is just beginning.
Just beginning. There's
It's
so many
just
different
beginning.
levels of the aftermath of Melissa that we will have to consider and we will have to work through. And I most of what I've been hearing is just about, food and putting up structures, but there's so much more. There's so much more. And I'm wondering the depth of how much consideration is being given for all of what the challenges that will come in the near future that they should be addressing now. And I'm
Yeah,
wondering how deeply are they addressing them?
there's something that I've been thinking. It's almost as if Jamaica has been split in two. So you have the
Mm-hmm.
devastation on the west, and
Mm-hmm.
you have the big city
Yes.
of
Yes.
Kingston, and people are carrying
Yes.
on and living their lives. But
Mm-hmm.
there's something I want to say to the people who are carrying on and living their lives as if nothing has happened in that country. It affects all of us, those in the diaspora, those in
Yes.
the country, those who were not
Mm-hmm.
hit, and those who were hardest hit. Why does it affect all of us? Jamaica has a crime problem.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
crime, the social ills in our society, stem from poverty. And poverty will be increased, has been increased
Oh, of
when
course.
people have lost
Definitely.
everything. So for the
Yes.
people in the East, it will be important and helpful for you to think of ways that you can help. Because if you don't
Yes.
help,
Yes.
people
Yes.
remain in their conditions, then the ills are going to migrate
Oh,
to the
absolutely.
areas where people
Absolutely.
have. So
Absolutely.
this is not, these are some of the concerns that I have, Jean, because none of
Mm-hmm.
us is immune to the impacts of this hurricane. Whether your house blew down, whether you lost a zinc or not, the
Mm-hmm.
impacts touch all of us because we are one country, we are a small country. Here I say we are one country and I don't even live in that country because I am touched by it. So
Absolutely. Absolutely.
one of the,
Absolutely.
yes, and one of the things that I continue to say is we are our brother's keepers. So we talk about community, and community is not just the people who live in your surroundings. It's about the human community, the compassion and the
Yes.
empathy and
Yes.
the need
Yes.
to help. And help don't mean that, oh, I don't have any money. It means, are you there for your brother? What can you do in your corner to help? I just wanted to put that plug in because I'm
Yes.
concerned about
Mm-hmm.
what will escalate
Mm-hmm.
once the numbness has worn off and
Mm-hmm.
the aid stops pouring in and people are left with themselves. If they are not having mental health supports and social supports to cope, those are some of the things that we need to think about. And we shouldn't just be thinking that this is what the government has to do. If we are waiting on government representatives to come in, how many constituencies do we have? 61 people?
Is
Or
it
can
61?
six
Yeah, 60
61 or
something,
63
61,
or something
63,
like
something
that,
like that.
right? We
Right.
and I'm not even, I don't touch on that at all
Mm-hmm.
in my conversations
Mm-hmm.
because I don't want
Yeah.
it to get political. But
Right.
I just brought that up to say that each of us has a responsibility. Don't wait around for anyone or anything, because if we come together as community, we can do much more than a single
We can do
representative
so much
could.
more, so much more. And it's going to mean that even if you were not directly impacted by this hurricane, that you have to dig deep and say, you know what? Now I'm thinking on a larger scale about humanity, right? Humanitarian
Absolutely.
steps that need to be taken. Because, oftentimes sometimes with some people, and I've seen this, if they are not directly impacted, they go, "Oh my gosh, those poor people," and that's where it stops. But you're
Yes.
so right. Don't think because you're in another part of the island, right,
No,
that you
we're
didn't
all
have to
hit.
go to that devastation. That at some point it won't touch on your doorstep in another,
Absolutely.
yeah, in another shape or form. And
Yeah.
one of the things that they spoke about on Sunday was that there's so many of the children who have been impacted by this. Their education has been impacted because so many of the schools got destroyed, right? Um, and so much is needed to get the children just back to some sort of normalcy, where they can go to school every day. Um, one of the schools that I know, one of the schools that, I'm very supportive of, my old high school, Montego Bay High,
Oh.
what they've started doing now that they're bringing the schools back. I must say we did not suffer a lot of damages on that compound. Some areas were, but not as much as some other places. But what they've started doing is the children are coming back and they're having like nice wholesome breakfast for them, where they can sit and they can talk and they can eat and they can pray and they can share together. Because some of those children are coming in from some of those areas that were greatly impacted, right? And yes, and they're coming in, they're maybe thinking, oh my gosh, you know, everything that I know of about a home is gone, right?
Hmm.
We may be sheltering, my family may be sheltering with some other person in our district, and they're coming in thinking, oh gosh, we were poor and we are all now we're even worse. And oh,
Hmm.
it's only people like us who experience, this type of loss. But to actually come in, to the school and to hear of, their fellow classmates who may live in some of the nicer areas, to hear their stories and how this hurricane impacted their families too. Their roofs are gone,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Mm-hmm.
the things that they may have lost, and even psychologically what they experienced during the
Mm-hmm.
storm and after the storm. They get a chance to sit together and to share their stories, to share the challenges that they've had, and inspire one another, even with those stories, and so I'm hearing that and I'm going, wow, because there's so many different ways that, and like you said, even when we can take ourselves out of the own corners and crevices of our minds, where we can say, oh my gosh, we've suffered so much just by lending a hand. So what the students have started doing at that school, from the collections of stuff that have started to come in, and they're realizing that, wait a minute, my fellow student lives in a district that has been impacted way more than where I live. And now they're packing up boxes, and they're inspiring each other and saying, listen, we can help out over here. But so there's so much that's going on. But so much more still needs to be done, because there are areas where children are still not in school, right? Children
Yes,
are still not sure where their meals are coming from, right? And so, you know, Jamaica is a place that we have, oh my gosh, so many churches, right? So many churches. And for the churches that are still standing, I think here is another responsibility of the pastors and the ministers and the reverends of these churches to say, listen, I have to really give an ear give an ear to my congregation, what it is that they're experiencing. How can we help? It may not always be with money, but it may be that, listen, I can maybe start some type of um something to either collect clothing or medical supplies or whatever it is, whatever the needs of your people are. So it's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot, but it also means that we as Jamaicans in Jamaica, or the Jamaican diaspora, we have to step up too and do more. We have to
absolutely,
step up and do
Jean.
more.
You touched on something that I wanted to zoom in on. Two things. There's a difference between sympathy and
Yes,
empathy.
yes, yes.
So now we need to cast aside the sympathy, which
Mm-hmm.
says poor thing,
Yes, yes,
and dig deeper into the empathy, which means putting yourself in the person's shoes,
yes,
right?
absolutely.
Feel what they're feeling and think
Mm,
about how you would be impacted and how you would like to be treated. Would you have faced a similar circumstance?
absolutely,
And as
absolutely.
you were talking about the Mobe High and what they're doing,
Yeah.
for the children, for everybody, but for the children especially,
Mm-hmm.
and you were mentioning the churches can become places of routine. So
Yes,
if the
yes.
school was not spared and the church was, then the
Mm-hmm.
church can consider how can they provide routine for the children? Does the church have
Yes,
internet? Can the church invest in internet? Is it that we're going to do some things that the children can safely practice their daily routines?
right.
What can their education look like? The difference. This is a period of creativity. Difficulty
Mm-hmm.
breeds creativity
Mm-hmm.
because it helps us, and poverty helps us to improvise. And so I can
Yes,
see
yes,
if we tap into that, we can come up with lots of creative and new ways of doing things in our country and for our country.
absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. On that note, I'm glad that you said that, because it also reminded me that sometimes we may not think that we can help, because we're thinking that we have to come up with something so grandiose, right? And it's the little things that count. On Sunday, as she was sharing that she saw people cooking on, the tire rims. And she said, one man who has a tire shop, she said, he went in it, in the back of his business, and he found all of the old rims, and he started donating those, because he said, yes, people can use them to make
It's
fire
a
to cook.
stove.
You understand me? For stove.
Absolutely.
And you know, and she says it has gone such a long way because people are so welcoming of that. Because listen, they can put a pot on and they can serve their family and their friends and people in their community. So listen, folks, there's so many ways that we can overcome, we can rise again from this horrible and devastating Hurricane Melissa, right? But like Dr. Tamara shared with us, be mindful, be mindful of the negative effects, right, of the aftermath of the storm. Dr. Tamara, thank you so much for joining me for Level Up today. You know, it's a pleasure to have you. I hope I can have you come back on, right? And we talk about
Anytime.
something else. But listen, it was a pleasure because I think it's important that we share key information such as this, right? Because what people don't know, they don't know. But when they hear it,
Absolutely.
they can listen, the antenna go up and you say, listen, I can do something. Oh, I was doing this. Oh no, we have to check this,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So thank you again so much for coming on and sharing your expertise with us. I think it's important that people know that they have the information and that they're aware of what they can do and what they should not do, right? So once
Absolutely.
again, thank you so much. And thank you to each and every one of your listeners for joining in and for, joining me today for this segment of Level Up. But listen, I want you to stay tuned in to primal4k.com because, there's a whole lot of niceness to come. And you know that two of my favorite DJs are going to be following after this, DJ 77 and DJ Gaddafi with Soul to Soul. So once again, thank you all so very much for joining me for this segment of Level Up. And as always, I leave you with